Hello, everybody. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to another episode of the Back of the Pack podcast brought to you by OKKC Sports. My name is Kyle Walker. Thank you very much for joining us as usual. I always thank you for joining us because I do appreciate it. It is a non-race weekend for me, still in recovery mode from last weekend's disastrous running with the cows half marathon. I have not even put on my running shoes now in 8 days. So probably not the best move on my part. I think I might go for a run today. How about you guys? Here in the Midwest, it is actually going to be a beautiful day. So there is no excuses not to get a couple miles in. I think I'm going to do some track work. That sounds about right for getting back out there. I think I'll go to the track. Anyway, like I did last week and how I like to start the show. And of course, that is just first off with thanks and gratitude. Thank you all very much, of course, for listening. Our listenership goes up just a little bit every week. So you guys are awesome. Thank you very much for being a part of the podcast. I've seen a few people sharing episodes. That is huge. I cannot stress enough that the sharing and the referrals, that speaks more than anything else. So if you share it on Facebook, let's say, and say like, hey, I like this podcast. This guy, is like really funny to listen to because he's such an idiot. Then, other people will want to listen at that point, listen and laugh at the idiot with the microphone. However, thank you all very much for sharing. Again, we are turning upwards, and that is really cool, and could not do any of it without you guys. So thank you so very much. So like I said, no races for me this weekend. We will still have Medal Monday. So have your medals this weekend, from this weekend, ready to go if you're out racing. I know there are a few 5Ks in the area that I saw a few of our fans at. So that is super cool. Hopefully you guys had a good run. Coming up next for the podcast on Monday, Memorial Day, so in 8 days from now, we're going to be at the Going the Distance 5K and 10K. So you can join me out there for Memorial Day. I will be doing the 10K as I as I try and get ready for the next half marathon. And then on Saturday, June 4th, we have Hospital Hill. We'll be there for that half marathon, one of the biggest half marathons in this area. So if you are out there, if you're already doing Hospital Hill, if you're doing the half or the 10K or the 5, make sure you find me out there in the shirt. I can give you a wristband or a keychain or a sticker, or just say hi, wave. I love running into people. It's awesome. And then after that, we'll go back to the 5K route. We have Heroes for Hospice on June 11th. So that's kind of what's coming up for the podcast. Now, I want to bring to your attention, there are a few races that have I've either talked to or they reached out or whatever the situation was, but there's some races I definitely want to bring to your attention as they're kind of choosing to partner with the podcast. And so I want to make sure to give you all the information. So coming up on Saturday, June 18th, we have the Fighting Fentanyl 5K. And we're actually going to have someone from that race on the show. I think we're going to record it this week. So hopefully a week from now, we'll have someone on from that show who's going to talk about the event. This is the first time it's being held, so it is a new 5K here in town. And honest to goodness, this town needs some new races. I love our races, but I've done most of them 5 times or more, or at least done the course under different names of races. So this is a new course and a new race. And so they are going to come on the show and talk about that. So I'm super excited about that. So all of you Back of the Pack fans, if you're looking for a 5K on June 18th, let's do the Fighting Fentanyl 5K. It is in Shawnee, Kansas. So let's blow that one up. The next one on our list, and we're going to have this race director on as well, a person I've known for quite a few years now. This is Rexy Run. They have a 5K and 10K option, and it is going to be held on August 20th. And so you can do either distance. I've done both distances before. It's a beautiful course down in Lawrence, Kansas. Not on the roads. It's on paved trail, and it's beautiful. It kind of goes through, I think they call it the wetlands down there, and then some park, and it's very pretty, kind of a peaceful run. So Rexy Run will have a representative on this show, a friend of mine, and so they're going to come on and talk about it. Again, I want to see the Back of the Pack fans blowing up that race. So we've got the Fighting Fentanyl 5K, we've got the Rexy Run 5K and 10K, and then next we are, again, another race director who's going to come on the show. This is all the way in September, but Hope on the Hill 5K and 10K. That's going to be held in Overland Park, Kansas. and we're going to have them on, and I want us all to blow up that race as well. So you're going to hear more about those races as we get closer to some of them. Some are actually almost here, like the Fighting Fentanyl 5K. Go ahead and get registered for that now, because it's going to be here before you know it. That is what's coming up. Okay, just a few races coming up, and then these ones I really want everyone to kind of show up to and show out for, and that's going to be super cool. So last week I gave you my rundown of the Running with the Cows half marathon and just how stupid I was for that race. And like, to be real honest, that race, it shook me. It kind of shook my confidence. It shook just the way I was thinking about life. I had one of those moments in the race, and anyone who's done a race or gone out for a run has had these moments where I'm walking the course. I'm in terrible shape. I'm struggling, dizzy, just an eyelash away from telling one of the little go-karts to take me back to the finish line, because I wanted off that course. That's the closest I'd ever been to a did not finish. But I'm just sitting there thinking, man, what am I doing? Why am I out here? Why am I running? Like, I can't even do a half marathon anymore. What am I going to do in September when I'm at Berlin and it's double this and I'm already dying here, mile 12? What if I can't get to mile 26 and I'm spending all this money and all this time and flying halfway around the world for a race I can't even finish? I had all the thoughts, just all the negative thoughts that we runners can definitely get when we have a bad run. And this kind of went beyond a bad run. Like, I was in medical danger last weekend. Again, if you didn't listen to last week's show, I did a terrible job hydrating, long story short. And so I had a terrible race. And again, it really messed with my confidence level, which is why I've not run in 8 days. I have not put on my shoes since that race, because it was so in my head, the mistakes that I had made and just how stupid I was for what I did. And so it really messed me up. And that made me think, and it's like, okay, so what am I going to talk about this week? I don't want to just rehash Running with the Cows. I'm not going to do that. But what happened that I can really kind of equate this to? I thought, it is finally time for this episode. This episode is, drum roll please, hitting the wall. Yay! I've been looking forward to this episode. So, hitting the wall. Every runner does it. When you reach a point in the race where your body says, no thanks, I'm done. Like, you can't get your mind to override your body and keep going. You want to stop. You can't breathe. You can't think. You just want it to be over. That is hitting the wall. That's the mental aspect of hitting the wall. We'll get to the physical aspect here in a minute. So where I was first introduced to this term was in a movie, and this is my all-time #1 favorite running movie ever. You need to go out, if you haven't seen it, and watch the movie Run, Fat Boy, Run. It stars Simon Pegg, British comedic actor. If you don't know him, he's one of my favorites. Hank Azaria is in it. It is a great movie, and it spoke a long time ago into my personal life as I took up running to handle divorce stress. And so it's not exactly my situation, but it's a very similar situation to what happened to me. And so I love this movie. There was quite a few years where I would watch this movie before every race. And I mean, not just 5Ks, but like before every half marathon, before every full marathon. I went down to New Orleans years ago, and like, I was trying to figure out the night before the race, how am I going to watch Run, Fat Boy, Run? Like, how am I going to do this? I don't know. So I had to pay, it wasn't pay-per-view, but I didn't have like the right streaming service. So I had to basically pay like $20 just to watch a movie that I'd already seen, 50 times. But I don't care. But in that movie is the best representation of what hitting the wall kind of looks like. And I'm going to try not to spoil it, but the runner, the main character, is trying to like kind of win the woman that he loves back. And so he decides he's going to run a marathon just to prove that he can be dedicated and committed and finish something that he started. And so during the marathon, he hits the wall, and they do this great physical representation where you just see him stop and he like bounces off this invisible force field. And then when they switch the camera around, there is an actual brick wall covering the course. And then it's very powerful part of the story. I mean, almost I'd call it the climax of the movie, when he hits the wall. And it's just, you got to go see it. It's a great representation. So yeah, hitting the wall is it's not completely mental, even though I used to think it was. So I actually went out and I did a little research on this. And it's funny because this is covered, of course, Runner's World covers it. And we're going to go with what they say. But the term hitting the wall, you can actually find it on a site like WebMD. Like it's a real thing. So here's what WebMD says about it. And they, again, take it to more the physical aspect. So they kind of pose it as a question and answer. So if you run too fast or too far, you'll hit the wall, question mark. Their response is every runner dreads hitting the wall, otherwise known as bonking. I have never heard that term, but if you hear someone say bonking, it's hitting the wall. Reaching that point in a race or training run where your legs pump battery acid, your breathing becomes labored, your pace slows to a crawl, and the thought of taking another step seems like the worst idea in the world. Some insist they've crashed into this wall in the middle of a 10K. Others believe it's simply a self-imposed mental barrier that can be overcome with a little grit and positive thinking. So which group is right? Okay, well, here's the answer. Again, according to WebMD. The verdict, hitting the wall is a real thing, but only when you're running long distances. The runner's wall is very real, says exercise psychologist and Upwave Review Board member Daniel Zeman, medical doctor. But you don't hit a wall in a 5K or a 10K. It has to be a situation where you expend more than 2,000 calories or run a duration longer than 2 hours. According to Zeman, most people hit that 2,000 calorie benchmark and thus proverbial wall somewhere around the 20 to 22 mile mark of a marathon, which is why the last 6 miles of the 26.2 mile race are often referred to as the second half. Why is that? Let's see, what's this? Sorry, why is that the point where so many crash and burn? It's a simple case of supply and demand. Your body demands glycogen, which is a long chain of sugars, aka carbohydrates, stored in your muscles and liver to provide the fuel for running. The human body, however, can only store so much glycogen, say 20 miles worth. When the supply runs out, the body starts burning fat for energy instead, which is kind of like trying to power the Back to the Future DeLorean with butter instead of plutonium. I love the analogy. Anytime you can throw Back to the Future into something, you're winning in my book. Okay, so now that I read that, it actually does kind of make sense that this is an issue. But okay, well, we'll break that down in a second. It goes on. So how does anyone finish a marathon without bonking or hitting the wall? That would be with proper combination of smart pacing, stellar hydration, and a process known as carb loading. 3 things that are extremely manageable for the average runner. We're not going to go over the pacing part. You guys can pace. This goes down to the carb loading. The final component, carb loading, is the most crucial for building up the glycogen stores to a level where they can get you 26.2 miles instead of 20 or 22. As the name suggests, the process involves maintaining a healthy carbohydrate-rich diet in the 3 or 4 days leading up to the race, while simultaneously cutting back on your mileage. Consuming sports drinks and supplements such as energy gels at key points during the race can help replenish your levels, but just make sure you've practiced with them. And that's always a good tip. Don't ever go into a race and decide, oh, I'm going to take the goo from the station and try that, even though I've never had it before. Yeah, not a good idea. Always train with the supplements you're going to put in you during a race. So that's what WebMD says about it. One of the things I found really interesting, and where I know that I personally have, I guess, fallen short or not done correctly, I always think of carb loading as like that big bowl of spaghetti the night before. You just, everything's normal until you get to that last meal, on a Friday night before the Saturday morning race, and then you just eat a whole bunch of pasta. Well, and yeah, that's great, but this says you need to start carb loading 3 to 4 days before the race. That was definitely new to me. I don't know about you all, but I did not know this. That's going to change the way I kind of prepare for races. I need to start carb loading a little before my usual carb loading point. So that was one of the really fascinating parts I found out of this article, again, from WebMD. And if a doctor says I can eat more spaghetti, I'm going to do what the doctor says because I want to eat more spaghetti. It makes me happy. So that is what they say. Now that we go over to Runner's World, as we go to them most of the time. And here's what I found there. What is hitting the wall during a marathon and how can you avoid it? Okay, well, we covered pretty much medically what hitting the wall is, and they say much the same thing. Can you avoid hitting the wall? This is what Runner's World says. It's important to note that you burn a blend of stored carbohydrate and fat for fuel all of the time. However, the ratio of these two fuels changes with the intensity of the activity. For example, during a speed workout, you will use a higher percentage of glycogen in your fuel blend. On a long, slow run, you would burn a higher percentage of fat and a lower percentage of carbohydrate. So, and again, it talks about the calorie intake. If it's 1,800 to 2,000 calories worth of glycogen in your muscles and livers, on average, we use about 100 calories per mile when running, depending upon the pace and the body mass. I kind of feel like that's low. I don't know. I think most of us probably burn a little more than 100 calories per mile. But yeah, this all really comes down to math. Once you hit that 2,000 calories and your body is like, okay, I'm out of everything to burn, I'm going to start burning stuff I probably shouldn't. That is when you're going to hit the wall. And you definitely can feel it physically and mentally. All right. So they talk about training. Okay. How to cope. Let's talk about how you cope with hitting the wall. Because honestly, I'd say for 99% of us, especially if you're listening to this podcast, because we are not the elite runners, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. When are we going to hit the wall? And while I know WebMD said you're not going to hit it in a 5K or 10K, probably true. In a half marathon, I think you absolutely can hit a wall. And on a full, you definitely will. So how do we cope when it happens? Because it's going to happen. Their first tool for this, distract yourself. Investigations into which brain strategies work best for non-elite runners have found external disassociation, boy, we're using big words here, focusing on scenery, crowds, things not directly tied to the race, appears to be the most effective wall avoidance strategy and results in a later onset of fatigue. A cheering crowd, a spectator sign, or a band playing in the distance may be just enough to distract your brain from the punishing bodily sensations of running, but without causing you to lose focus on pace and water stops. So crowd races are good. Not going to lie, Chicago Marathon had great crowd support. New York blew them out of the water. If you want good crowd support, do the New York Marathon, or enter the lottery and try and get a spot in the New York Marathon, because those crowds were legit. There was a point during the New York Marathon, and I'm totally sidebarring here, apologies. The crowd was so big and they were so amped up for the runners, they just kind of kept squeezing onto the course, where we were at a point we had to run single file because there was no more room on the road. The runners were in single file lines because the crowds were just surging in from the side so much. There was almost not enough room to get through them. A little nerve-wracking, not going to lie, but also really cool because those people were so excited and they were out to cheer on everybody. Anyway, I digress. Number two, the number two way to cope with hitting the wall, mentally hurdle it. Positive self-talk and visualization, big words, play a huge part in avoiding the wall. Before the race begins, do some oh my goodness, I can't talk this morning. This is terrible. Do some visualization exercises in which you hit the wall and picture yourself dealing with it effectively. If you believe you will dominate the wall, you are more likely to make those beliefs a reality. Okay, so if you go and watch Run Fat Boy Run, you'll see this in action. You will see the mental defeating of the wall. So yeah, the mental hurdle is how they approach it in that movie. And I suppose, again, according to the movie and now what Runner's World says, that is a real thing. Not how I handle it personally, but everyone handles hitting the wall differently. Number three, this might be more me. Face reality. If you do hit the wall, sip some sports drink to get carbs into your system, but don't overdo it. And it's best if you have a running partner who can help encourage you through the worst and run with you to the finish. Please remember, however, that hitting the wall can affect your ability to think. I've seen plenty of runners disoriented and slurring their words, being taken into a medical tent for treatment. I feel concerned when I see them wobbling on the course, trying to make it to the finish. There is a point of no return. that you need to accept. Going beyond that can be dangerous. If it's not your day, it's not your day. There will be others. So that is what Runner's World says about how to cope with hitting the wall. Unfortunately, oh boy, for me last week, I think mostly it was face reality. However, I pushed it past the dangerous point. But I would love to hear from you guys. What works best for you when you hit the wall? Do you face reality? Be like, man, I've hit the wall. I'm just going to keep kind of hobbling along, but this sucks. I don't like this. I'm not having any fun. This race is terrible. I'm never going to race again. I'm wasting all my time and money. I'm going to sell my shoes and I hate this and it's awful. And they can just keep the medal, or whatever your thoughts might be. Or do you mentally hurdle it? Are you able to kind of visualize getting over that wall in your head and you can make that a reality? More credit to you if that's your approach. Does not work for me. That's for sure. But if it works for you, you are awesome. Good job. Or do you just distract yourself? I think in other races of mine, not counting last week's disaster, I think distract yourself is kind of my biggest one. I will think about anything else. And, a lot of people, if you think about a race course and you think, a lot of times you kind of do an out and back. I actually like the out and backs. I like going one way and seeing all the runners coming the other way. For me, it's a good mental distraction. I look and see, oh, well, what pacer is about to pass me? Oh, what sign are they holding? Oh, do I know that guy? Or, hey, that's a cool shirt. Hey, look, they're cheering for Back of the Pack podcast. Yay! Whatever it is, it's a good distraction when you kind of have all that oncoming traffic on the other side of the road. At least for me, that's something that's worked for me before. I just kind of look at people and think about the pacers and where they are in the race and how much do they have left? I have a lot more than that. And doing the mental math. And yeah, it's just a distraction. Crowds are always great, but you can't count on them. Live bands on the course, not really a norm around here. Maybe one or two races do that. That's more for the big races, the big marathons. So I would love to know what everyone thinks. What do you guys do? Do you distract yourself, mentally hurdle it, or face reality? Because we all hit the wall. It's going to happen. So I definitely recommend, if you want to kind of see this in action, go watch the movie Run, Fat Boy, Run. Even for more than this, it's just a wonderful movie. Probably considered a romantic comedy, although it's still pretty funny. I think of it more as a sports movie than just romantic comedy, but you guys can be the judge of that. So that is where we're at this week. Again, we'll be on Instagram and Facebook tomorrow for Medal Monday. Please, have your bling ready, or if you want to show off a medal you've already earned previously and just want to show it off because it's a cool medal, I'm in. And make sure you reach out to the show if there's a race that you support or something you would like covered on the show. Let me know, because I'm 100% going to try and do it if I can. If I'm not already spoken for on a weekend, I will go cover pretty much anybody's race. And if you are a race director and want to come on the show and talk about it, I welcome you as well. Again, we've got 3 lined up and probably 2 or 3 more that we're just working on some scheduling and getting them on. Maybe it's a race that's still kind of far out, so we're just kind of treading water until they're ready to really ramp it up. But it's really cool. I'm thankful to all these races who might want to come on and talk about it and just share the word. That's how you learn about cool new races. Is people talk about it, you hear about it, and be like, hey, I'm going to do that race. But we've got the 3 that I want the show to support: Fighting Fentanyl 5K, Rexy Run, and then Hope on the Hill. Let's do that. That's going to be super fun. And make sure you go to our website, www.backofthepackpodcast.com, if you want to get yourself a shirt and start rocking the teal at all the races, because who wouldn't? You guys can do that. We do have tank tops available because it is starting to get warmly outside. So grab yourself a tank top. You can get a coffee mug. I've got the wristbands and some keychains and some stickers. I can just hook you up with all the stuff, because that's the fun part. Man, with swag, right? We want the swag. So that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. I appreciate your support as always. Again, thank you for making this podcast just grow a little more each week, a little more successful. I love it, and I'm having so much fun doing it. And I love everyone reaching out. You can hit us up on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter if you're a Twitter person. All of that is just at Back of the Pack Podcast. You can find us there. We got to work on Twitter, though. Not much happening over there. So, and reach out to the show. If you want a topic covered, if you want to say, hey, you're wrong and here's why, I'm open to all that, man. Bring it on. I love talking to people, love communicating. To the two people I responded to on Instagram this morning, I apologize it took so long. Instagram is weird when you get messages. Like, it's not just right there in your face. Hey, you have a message. You kind of have to go a couple layers deep to find it. So to the Instagram folks, I apologize for the delay responding to your messages. Thank you so much for reaching out. I love it. I love it. Bring it on. So this has been the Back of the Pack podcast. Again, I'm your host, Kyle Walker. This show is brought to you by OKKC Sports. It is produced by Katie O'Neill, and we thank you, as always, for all your support. We'll be back next week with another episode. We won't have a race breakdown because the race is actually on Memorial Day. You know what? Maybe I'll record on Memorial Day instead of Sunday. How about this? Next week, we might be a day late coming out, but we will get out there. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys next week.